So just a very quick agenda for today. We're talking about investing. We're talking about 401ks, IRAs, that type of a thing. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of it. We're going to talk about some of the survey results when you guys filled out the survey on the first day. There was a number of questions about debt, which is the reason why I'm pulling this lesson in, because quite a few people did not know about a lot of these items. So that's why I'm teaching this. We're going to go through different definitions of various IRAs, traditional Roth, 401k, HSA, other small business retirement funds. It may or may not be applicable. Tax strategies, that's huge. I'm just going to come right out front and tell you, a lot of times when I've taught a retirement course, there's a lesson on Social Security and Medicare, then I teach this. Then I have somebody from Northwestern Mutual come in. Then I have a lawyer come in to talk about wills, trusts, and estates. And so here, I'm teaching this. I'm teaching everybody a specific thing. The guy from Northwestern comes in and says something exactly the opposite, and all eyes just turn to look straight at me. And okay, stop. Let's stop. Let's go over this. How old are you? You're 33. Oh, that's right. Where were you when the mortgage crisis happened? Living with mom and dad? Okay. You don't have to, you have no idea what I'm talking about here. How many people went through the Great Depression? None of you, but your parents did, or your grandparents might have. So there's different personality things that are going on there. There's also one thing that he was not aware of. He was taught about investing and finances. He was never taught tax strategies. So the statement I was making is that if all you have is, and this is where most people are at this point today, if you have just Social Security and you have, by the time you retire, about $500,000 worth of retirement funds, you have no business having a Roth IRA. And of course, he just looked at me like I was crazy. And I proved to him how that's true with a simple tax strategy, how it works. And he was blown away. He now teaches that. So it's nice because we learned a lot off each other, which is a good thing, but there's a lot of things that can help. A lot of times, I know, Don and Vicki, you're closer to retirement age. Well, you might be at retirement age. You get these cards in the mail. Hey, come and have a free steak dinner. We're going to talk to you about investments and everything else. Hey, the steak is great. Bartolotta's, Mr. B's, I'll take it. But no, you're not going to touch my finances. And the whole thing is trying to get you to give them your money to turn it over into a Roth conversion. And we'll talk about that later. And I just looked at the guy, I'm like, that is the biggest mistake for the majority of these people in this room right now. But we'll talk about that. But I'm just going to set that out there. So maybe someday you're going to get a card in the mail. Oh, I remember what Terry said about that. Let me call him first before I even, try to show up, unless you want a free steak dinner. I know somebody who every time she gets one, she goes. It's like, okay. We're going to talk about what an RMD is, a QLAC, and a QCD. And people are like, what the heck is that? And what does it mean? We're going to briefly talk about it. Most of you probably won't have to worry about it for a long time, because this is some of the things that you have to worry about once you retire. I'm looking at some of these right now, and because I'm going to be retiring in about 3 years. So I'm making sure I plan for some of these items. But just hearing about it and knowing that it exists. And when you hear some of the news about some of the tax laws, RMD is now at 72, age 72. Well, what's that? Well, you're going to learn tonight what that is. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is kind of small. I kind of read it to you. These are some of the questions that we had, the survey questions about investment knowledge. So how would you rate your current knowledge of investments? 43% said not very knowledgeable at all, and someone just said not knowledgeable at all. So that's 72% basically don't know much about investing. Do you currently have a retirement savings plan? 43% said yes, 43% said no, and 14% said, I don't know. That one scares me. You need to know what you've got. Which types of retirement accounts are you familiar with? Everybody's heard of a 401k, so that's a 79%. The other three kind of match at 57. It's like an IRA, Roth IRA, pension plans, and 7% said none. How often do you review your retirement investments? 64% said never. I rest my case there. Let's go on to the next slide. This is why I'm teaching this lesson. Do you seek professional advice for retirement investments? 79% said never. What is your primary goal for retirement investing? There's quite a few: that capital preservation, growth, income generation. Someone said just to start one. Someone said my dad told me to. Maintain your lifestyle, retirement. So there's a number of reasons to do it, but realistically, again, I told that story about the flood, and quite frankly, what's the whole idea behind that story is that at some point when we retire, we're going to get there and go, oh my gosh, I can't make ends meet. I mean, for the baby boomers, we were taught that Social Security was our retirement. And so that's not the case anymore. If you go on the Social Security website, it says Social Security should not be your main source of retirement. It says right on there over and over again. So we need to be cognizant of that. But some people are be praying, God, I can't do this. I can't do this. What should I do? What should I do? Well, God said, well, I gave you that raise. I gave you that bonus. What did you do with your tax return? Et cetera, all the way down the line. So when God is giving us a provision today, it's not to spend today like you have a hole in your pocket. God is giving us a provision the rest of our life. He wants us to be a steward over what he's given us. Next slide, please. Okay, history of retirement accounts. I am not going to quiz you on this. I'm just going to briefly go over this just to give you an idea of where things are at. 1974, I was 12 years old. IRAs were first authorized by ERISA, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. 1974, you could contribute 15% of your income not to exceed $1,500. That's pretty low. Today's max is $7,000, $8,000 if you're 50 or over. In 78, they created an SCP, that's for small businesses. We'll talk about that later. 1978, a 401k was introduced. The first time I ever heard about a 401k, I think it was 1990. And they talked to me about a 401k. I'm like, what's that? And so I was contributing 10 cents per hour to a 401k at that time. Back then, hey, that's what the heck, it's good money. Not really, but back then we thought it was. But again, in 1990, that's the first time we heard about it. So, I mean, even though IRAs started in the 70s, they didn't start becoming popular until the 90s and 2000s. So all of these people, especially the baby boomers, are growing up. Some of them had pensions. They had Social Security. Social Security was supposed to be enough to live on. That was supposed to be your retirement. That's what we were taught. That's not the case. So all of a sudden, most of the people who come to some of these retirement seminars are baby boomers or people in their 50s who are getting really close. And they're like, oh my gosh, what do we do? Is it too late to start? It's never too late to start. So in 1986, there's restrictions, and then a spousal IRA was introduced. So my wife doesn't work, but I can put money in an IRA for her, thank God. Then there's other things going on in the 90s. Next slide, please. 1997, the Roth IRA was introduced. And the same thing as an education IRA. So if you're looking for your kids to go to school, you can contribute to a 529 plan. In the state of Wisconsin, it's the EdVest. It's like an IRA. You can't deduct it from your federal taxes, but you can take a deduction on your state taxes for whatever contributions you make. And then all the proceeds you get out of that once your child goes to college is 100% tax-free. So if you have kids, that's one to think about. There's catch-up contributions were allowed in 2001, bankruptcy protection, allowance for charitable giving. 2006, they made changes to the Roth IRA, conversion of traditional to a Roth, which I never recommend. And then, of course, 2022, the RMD, which is a required minimum distribution. So, and right now it's at age 73. That's been creeping up every single year. So what's all that about? So a required minimum distribution. So if you have an IRA or if you have a 401k that's pre-tax, at some point in time, the government wants their money. So at some point in time, they're going to require that you they're going to demand that you take money out of your IRA because they want that tax, right? So They don't require it for Roth IRAs. Why not? Because you're not going to owe them any tax on that anyway, so they don't care. So it's only for the regular IRAs and traditional 401ks. Next slide, please. So again, I'm putting this up there. I highlighted it. I made it big and bold so you can see it. Social Security is not meant to be your only source of retirement income. I believe it's going to be there. I don't believe in these conspiracy theories that say it's not. It's going to be there. I know that during the Biden administration, they had 85% bipartisan support on Social Security bill that Biden would not sign. Right now, Trump was trying to do something very quickly. The quickest he could do is give some type of a break for seniors 65 and older who are collecting Social Security. He gave them an additional standard deduction. But right now, up to 85% of your Social Security can be taxed, depending upon your income level. Depending upon your income level, might be 0, it might be 85%. But wait a minute, if you put in 7.65%, and your employer put in 7.65%, didn't you already pay taxes on half of that, on your portion? Absolutely. So it's like double taxation. So right now there is legislation, they're trying to create it right now to stop taxes on Social Security altogether. It used to be that way, and I don't know what year that changed, but initially Social Security benefits were not taxed at all. They were not part of the equation. But it's going to be there. And there's many different things that they're looking at. They're looking at raising the threshold for paying on that out of your paycheck. So right now, I want to say it's about 175,000. So now it's going to be, I think they're trying to make it up to 250,000. So if you make up to, once you hit 250,000, you don't pay Social Security taxes anymore. You still pay Medicare. Well, Medicare just keeps on going and keeps on going no matter how much you make. Social Security stops. And that's what they're trying to get rid of, that threshold. There's other ways. First of all, stop borrowing against it. The government shouldn't be borrowing against Social Security to begin with, right? It's going to be there. So there's a lot of different things that they can put into place to save Social Security. It's going to be there. It's not just going to disappear with millions and millions and millions of Americans being left in the dark. It's not going to happen that way. Next slide, please. Other fun facts. To contribute to a retirement fund, it has to be cash or cash equivalents. You cannot use unearned taxable income. So you can't take your Social Security, because that's not considered earned income. You can't take that and get a deduction, by putting it into an IRA. You can't do it. You can't use child support payments. It has to be earned income from a job. Right now, about 33.2 million households own an IRA with about $7.5 trillion in retirement funds. And about 2.5 million households own Roth IRAs, holding $800 billion in assets. Next slide, please. So let's talk about what a traditional IRA is. A traditional IRA stands for an individual retirement arrangement. It's donating into a fund tax-free. So basically it's pre-tax. So if you're making $10,000 and you're contributing $1,000 into an IRA, you're only taxed on $9,000, not on the $10,000, okay? In a traditional IRA, there's no employer contributions. This is done on your own. This is what I set up for my wife because my wife doesn't work. So I went to the bank, I got an IRA set up for her, and every year we max out her contribution so that she has something when she retires too. Granted, it's all of ours, it's both of ours anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But if I'm maxing out my 401k and then she's doing that, that's that much more we'd have for retirement. There's low contribution limits. In 2025, the contribution limit is $7,000. If you're age 50 or older, you have $1,000 extra, so you can contribute $8,000. Mind you, the word low, and that's going to come into play in a couple other slides. Withdrawals are subject to income tax after 59.5. So you can take withdrawals and they will be subject to tax. If you take withdrawals before 59.5, not only do you get taxed, but you get penalized 10%. It's not made for you to take out. Same thing with a 401k or any of those retirement funds. It's a tax-free growth, 59 and a half, age 59 and a half to withdraw without a penalty. And you are required to start drawing out at 72. And on the other slide, it did go up to 73. I forgot to change the slide. So that would be the required minimum distribution. And there are income phase outs for deductibility, wild range of investment choices, can be self-directed. So the difference between a 401k and an IRA as far as the structure is concerned, a lot of times when you get a 401k at work, the investments are, you really don't got much of a choice. You know, you have maybe about 10 or 15 different things you can choose from, and okay, what's this one? I don't know, I'm gonna select this one and this one, and they may or may not necessarily be the best. With an IRA, you can go to an investment advisor. Northwestern Mutual is, where I go. There's a bunch of other places you can go. But you have a huge plethora of investment choices, and they will sit down with you and help you determine how you want to invest your money. Okay, that's one thing I like about the IRA as opposed to a 401k, but there's some twists. Next slide, please. Continued, you can withdraw funds without penalty if age 59 or older, 59 and a half or older, or if you're age 55 and retired with no other income. I don't like to tell people some of these other ones. You can take out, if it's your first time home, you can take out $10,000 without penalty and use that to pay your loan. You'll still get taxed on it, but my piece of advice that I give to everybody is if you have money in an IRA or 401k, pretend it doesn't exist. Do not take money out of it. Don't do it. Out of it you can, but I'm teaching this, so I'm letting you know everything you can about it. You can pay higher education expenses out of it with no penalty. You can take money out if you're totally and permanently disabled. If you have to pay I owe the IRS $25,000, I can take that right out of my 401k. I won't get penalized. I'll get taxed on it. But if you want to pay health insurance premiums while unemployed, and to pay expenses related to a birth or adoption of a child. Again, I recommend don't touch it. I know people who touch it all the time and they have nothing, and they're 60 years old and they have nothing. All withdrawals are subject to tax. For a 401k, if you leave your job, it's great to take your 401k and roll it over into an IRA. So you go from one job to another, just take it out of there. You really don't have a huge selection of investment choices with a 401k. Well, you take it and roll it over into an IRA. You keep it as a retirement fund, and of course the financial advisor can work with you to make more money than you would at your work. Next slide, please. Roth IRA, and as we're going through this, we'll talk about some strategies in a little bit. Right now, I'm just kind of giving some brief definitions. So Roth IRA, very similar. It's just that it's after tax contributions. So you make $10,000, you pay taxes on your $10,000, then you give $1,000 to the Roth IRA. The advantage to that is that when you take money out when you retire, nothing that you take out is taxable because you've already paid tax on the $1,000. Even whatever you make on it, it's not going to be taxed. So that's the difference between the Roth and a traditional. Withdrawals are not subject to income tax, like I mentioned. There's a tax-free growth. Again, same thing, 59 and a half to withdraw without a penalty. If you withdraw before that time, you start getting penalized. And once you open up a Roth IRA, you can't touch it for 5 years. Even if you open it when you're 60 years old, you're over 59 and a half. Should I get penalized? According to the definition I just gave you, you shouldn't. But one of the rules regarding Roth IRAs, you have 5 years, you have to leave it for 5 years or you will get a penalty. Contribution limits, same as a regular IRA. Wide range of investment choices, etc. Next slide, please. So a 401k, it's like having either an IRA or a Roth IRA at your job. But there's some different rules. So again, with a regular one, and by the way, this, if some of you work in healthcare, so if you have a 403B or a 457, exact same thing. They're just the same type of accounts, but they're named differently because of the types of businesses that they're associated with. And again, it lowers your tax liability if you contribute to the 401k. Employer matching is an instant raise. So sometimes your employer might have 100% matching. So if you put in 6%, they're going to match it and put in 6%. People don't do that anymore. That's a thing of the past, I think. I haven't seen that for quite some time. But it might be a percentage. If you give whatever you give up to 6%, will match 50% of that. So if you put in 6%, they're going to put in 3%. But that's a 3% raise. You know, that's extra cash. You can put in for a specific dollar amount, they can do a partial match, etc. You can invest it in your choice, mutual funds, large cap bond funds, index, company stock. Next slide. So a huge difference here is that the contribution limit, now a contribution limit for the regular IRA is $7,000. If you're over the age of 50, it's $8,000. For the 401k, it's $23,500 in 2025. And if you're age 50 and over, it's $31,000, and that's going to increase in 2026. That's huge. So you can start putting in 10% or 11% or whatever, as long as you don't max out, as long as you don't surpass that max. If you surpass that max, I've seen somebody do that. They basically, you know, the payroll just has it shut down. So, okay, I can only contribute this much. We're going to stop your contributions until January 1st. Why is that important? So, like a really cool strategy that I like to do. First of all, I like contributing to a 401k because I can contribute more. Like I said, we went through the mortgage crisis. We started from scratch. I told you never to take anything out of your 401k. That's because I learned the hard way. We had no choice. The mortgage crisis happened. I had we had to move. I needed a house. I needed a roof over my. I had no choice. We went into the 401k to get the house. And we've been building that back ever since. We've also been paying off our mortgage ever since. So we don't go on a lot of vacations, almost never. So we did one this year, but quite frankly, I'm trying to max out. So I can maximize them by putting $23,500 into my 401k. That's why I like the 401k. I hate the investment choices. So they created a new rule just a couple of years ago. So once you're 59 and a half, even though it used to be if I took money out of my 401k, they'd have to close it down. That was the law. Now they can't touch that. It stays open. So I'll contribute to my 401k. And once a year, I contact my financial advisor. Oh, good, I'm going to move $20,000 into my IRA, where he's going to invest it and make a heck of a lot more money than I would in my 401k. No penalty, no taxes, no nothing. So I will contribute to my 401k first because I can contribute more. I'd rather contribute 23,000 rather than 7, and then I'll move it once a year to my IRA where I have better investment choices so I can make more money. Kind of cool. You are required to start drawing at 72, 73 if you turn 72 after 12/1 of 22. All withdrawals are subject to tax. If you leave, this is what I don't like. First of all, if you leave your job, you roll it over into a new one. One of the things you can do as well with the 401k, which I hate and I recommend never doing, is borrowing against your 401k. Because people know it's there, I'm going to take money out for this. I'm going to take it out for a house. I'm going to borrow up to 50% of it, which they can. All of a sudden, their job ends tomorrow. They automatically owe taxes and penalties on the amount they took out because it's no longer considered a loan. It is now considered a distribution. And I've seen people do that. They'll switch jobs, and all of a sudden they have to pay all these taxes. So again, I don't recommend borrowing. I don't recommend taking money out of it. Next slide, please. So things I hate to teach, if you leave your job, you can take the money and run, subject to taxes and 10% penalty. Don't do it. $5,000 today can grow into $108,000 in 4 years. It's a lot of money. So I know people doing that. They go from job to job and they just take their 401k monies and spend it. And we're talking $4,000 or $5,000 a crack every year. You can take out a short-term 5-year loan up to 50% of your 401k. The interest is generally cheaper than a bank loan. You can't use it for investment property, just primary residence only. But again, if you quit your job before it's paid off, it automatically is considered a distribution and becomes taxable. Again, I don't recommend it. But I'm just telling you, these are things that you're able to do. And I'm telling you, my advice is don't do it. Next slide, please. So the next one is an HSA account. Does anybody have an HSA? Okay, quite a few people. An HSA is a savings plan, health savings account, if you have a high deductible plan. I've got a high deductible plan. The maximum is $8,000 out of pocket for the year for my entire family. If it was just my wife and me, it'd be like $4,000. But for my entire family, that's $8,000. It's a lot of money. But my premiums are very, very cheap. So I put money in an HSA. People have heard of an FSA, correct? Have you heard of an FSA? Very similar to an FSA, but with the FSA, if you take money out pre-tax, you have to use it by the following March or you lose it. So it's a use it or lose it. With an HSA, if you don't use it, it keeps on rolling over year after year. It has to be used for medical expenses. But once you hit the age of 65, you can take it off for whatever you want. So the reason why I brought this up is because the intent of the HSA was not this, but this is what it's become with all the change in laws, is that inside the HSA, you can also invest, just like an IRA. So if you've maxed out your IRAs and 401ks, put money into your HSA, and it's another investment vehicle. I have a funny feeling in the next couple of years that may be shut down, but as of today, that's the way it is. You know, it's something that they created. It's a monster that they created, but it's there. You could use it as that. But quite frankly, you know, so I will contribute $8,000 to an HSA on an annual basis. Why? I have $8,000 out of pocket. $8,000 is pre-tax. I don't get taxed on that. That's a lot of money. You know, in all the, I have about 135 people that I do taxes for on an annual basis. And I've been doing taxes, oh my God, for years. I think before I became an accountant. I think I took an H&R Block tax course even before I went to college. And out of all, God, that'd be like almost 30 years. And out of all that time, I think 4 times have I ever gotten anybody who had enough medical expenses that they were able to deduct it on their taxes. It's almost impossible to do that. So, and if you can, I feel really sorry for you because that's a lot of money, you know, to be able to do that. So tax-free, $8,000 pre-tax, why not? Contributions are not allowed once you enroll in Medicare, and withdrawals, like I said, must be used for medical expenses. I'm going to jump to the bottom. 2025 contribution limits is $4,300 for yourself or $8,550 for a family, or $1,000 catch up if you're 55 or older. So you can contribute a lot of money to that. So, you know, when we're talking about budgeting, life happens, right? You have all these bills that happen. You get into a car accident, you have all these medical bills all of a sudden because you weren't anticipating them. That's the problem. You should be anticipating your medical bills. HSA, FSA, something like that. So I'm putting this out there as a tool that you can use in your budgeting. Next, there's a different catch-ups for right now. If your age, this is going to expire, but if your age is 60 to 63, you can contribute an additional $11,250. I wish I had that. An additional $11,250 to my 401k. That would be fantastic. employer contributions, required minimum distribution at age 73, 59 and a half for withdrawals without penalty, etc. Penalties for withdrawing before the age is 10% straight across the board. So again, it's a side-by-side comparison of personal IRA with a 401k pre-tax or after-tax personal Roth with a Roth IRA. Yes? So if I want to contribute, and we're married filing joint, I want to contribute to an IRA, I'll be completely phased out after 143,000 of your adjusted gross income. With a 401k, that doesn't exist. And again, at the very bottom of this, I have the Roth 5-year rule. You cannot withdraw tax-free earnings until it's been at least 5 years that it's been in the fund. So that's one drawback before a Roth IRA. So I've got all of these things up there. What's going to work? And again, it's a lot of information. What do you do? Next slide, please. We're getting there. So required minimum distribution, I think I briefly mentioned that. It was passed in 2022, age is 73. If you have an IRA or a 401k, you have to begin to take out at least a certain amount by age 73. There's a table for it. There's a percentage of that that has to come out. And we're not close to that, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail unless you have some questions, Don. You and I are probably the only ones who would probably care about this right now. Who said, oh, yeah, I'm sure you do. You look too young to care. Yeah. So what's interesting is that how does that work? So if I turn 73 this year, I have until April 1st of the following year to make my first required minimum distribution. Then it's December of every year that you have to make it. What people forget is that the very first year, if you wait until that April, you have 2 required minimum distributions to take in that year. So that's my only caveat with that. Every single year since I've been teaching this has been increasing by 1 year. It was 70, then it was 71, then it was 72, and now it's 73. Then there's a QLAC, which is a qualified longevity annuity contract. You can take $200,000 of your IRA and put it into an annuity and kind of bypass some of this stuff. Next slide. This is my favorite, which I'm looking forward to. I give tithes and offerings to the church. I can give a QCD, a qualified charitable contribution. So by the time I'm retired, my house is paid off. There's no way I can even begin to itemize. I can't itemize charitable contributions, but if I take money out of my IRAs and pay tithes with that, I may be subject to tax. I don't want to go over my limit, but so what I can do, I can have a qualified charitable distribution. So it would go from my IRA directly to church or whatever nonprofit that, 501c3 that you designate. And you'll get credit for that from the 501c3, but it won't go to you, so you do not pay taxes on it whatsoever, which is kind of nice. Nice way to bypass taxes. I've got that set in my mind for later on. If you inherit an IRA, for example, you inherited it from somebody who passed away, has to be distributed within 10 years, but you will not get penalized on it. So Jenny, you inherit $100,000, you can take $10,000 a year or wait all 10 years and take out all of it all at once. You'll get taxed on it, but you will not get penalized because it's a very specific type of thing going on there. By the way, if you don't pay your IRMDs, you'll get taxed very highly on it. Inherited IRAs must also be distributed within 10 years, but that remains untaxable. Next slide, please. So, with all this information I gave you, what do I do with it? I have 7 different strategies. So, realistically, you got to figure out which one do you think fits your personality and is going to work best for you. So this is where, once you start looking at this, start circling and making notes on the one you think is going to work best for you. And again, when you're starting with your budgets and you're setting up your retirement plans, okay, here's my 401k, it's taken out automatically. I don't even think about it. And then I pay all the rest of my bills after that. If it's something that you set up, and you only have to think about it once at the very beginning, and then hopefully on an annual basis, if you want to, really know how well you're doing, how well you're not doing. But the strategy number one is that your tax bracket is a major factor on which route to take. Do you do a Roth 401k? Do you do a traditional 401k? So my financial advisor says Roth is the way to go. You have no business doing an IRA. So you pay all your taxes now so that when you retire, you don't have to pay any taxes on the Roth IRA when you take it out of the funds. And some people will do that simply because it's their personality. It's like, I don't want to have to worry about it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want a tax strategy. I just don't want to pay taxes on it in the future. Okay. So, but if you expect your retirement income to be lower, so right now, let's say your tax bracket that you're in is 20%, and your retirement income is going to be much lower when you retire. So you might be in a 5% bracket or a 10% bracket. Then I would suggest going with a regular IRA or a regular 401k. Why? You take advantage of the tax break today, and so you might pay a little bit of taxes in the future, but it's not going to be as much as 20%. It's not going to, but if you're paying 5 or 10%, I'd rather pay that than 20%. If you expect your retirement income to be higher, so I actually do know somebody, just found out they were making like $80,000 a year, and somebody died and they just inherited $3.5 million. So, right, tough problem to have. He called me and he goes, I don't know what to do. I'm like, what's your problem? I know what to do. So, but in this particular case, this is where his tax bracket when he retires is going to be super high. So this is where your contributions today might be to a Roth IRA so that you don't pay taxes on it later on. So you're paying taxes on it today at a 10%, where when you retire. So it's just the opposite of the other situation I said before. So think about what tax bracket you may or may not be in. Sometimes that's almost too much to think about. Next strategy. Strategy number 2, taxes. I have 3 different scenarios set up there. One if you're married, one if you're single or married filing separate, and the third one if you're head of household. So in the first scenario, let's say your Social Security, so you're married here, your Social Security income is $30,000. You have Medicare deductions of about $5,000, because it's about $2,500 a year for health insurance if you have Social Security, if you have Medicare. And then you have your IRA distribution of $31,400. I picked that amount for a specific reason. So over in the green column, when things total up, it totals up to $38,250. Now what's interesting is when you look at the $30,000 minus the $5,000, the only taxable portion is $6,850. And like I said, your Social Security can be taxable up to 85%. In this case, it's not that high because their income is not that high. This is under the current law. I mean, at one point, if you have $30,000 in Social Security and your other income is like this, 85% of your Social Security is subject to tax. But in this particular scenario, only $6,850 is. Why do I know that? Because I put it through the tax software just to make sure. So right now, your total adjusted gross income is $38,250. Your standard deduction for married filing joint is $30,000. If you're retired at age 65, you have an extra $1,400. So your total standard deduction is 31,400. That's why I pulled an IRA distribution of 31,400 in the left column, because your total standard deduction is going to be 31,400 over here. Basically, this leaves you with a total taxable income of $6,850. Your total tax is $685 for the year on $56,000 worth of income. Not bad, right? And then I have one for, and this, so long story short, what I figured out, if you had, in order to take $31,400 a year, every single year for 20 years, you'd have a retirement account of about $628,000. So if you have $628,000 in retirement funds, you have no business having a Roth IRA. Why? Because it's not going to be taxed anyway. Under this scenario, if this is what your income is, you're not going to be paying, other than $685, you're not going to be paying tax. So why have a Roth IRA? You're paying taxes on it before, when you first contribute it. When you retire, you're not going to pay taxes on it. Under this scenario, you're not going to be paying taxes on a regular IRA either, because of the standard deduction. Does that make sense? Is there anybody who doesn't get that? Moni? Okay. And so then here's single, married, filing separate. I got 314,000, HOA 467,000. If you have that amount of money, you have no business having a Roth IRA. Next slide, please. This part is fun. Like I said, they're creating legislation now so that Social Security is not taxable. At one point, it wasn't taxable. Somewhere along the line, they made it taxable, and they're trying to make it so it's not anymore. For our share, we already pay taxes on it. The employer already paid taxes, so why are we paying it again? So this is the exact same thing, except if you notice in the first column, or the first green column, out of all the Social Security, 0 is taxable. So you take out 31,400, your total standard deduction is 31,400, your total tax is 0. Same thing with single or married filing separate. There's your Social Security of 24,000 minus your Medicare deductions, then your IRA distribution of 15,700. None of your Social Security is taxable, and your total standard deduction is 15,700. No taxes. Same thing here. Because Social Security is not taxable, there's no taxes here. Each of these scenarios is saying I'm taking out the amount of my standard deduction. If my standard deduction is 23,000, I can take out 23,000 because it's not going to be taxable. And so depending upon what you have for retirement, depending upon how much your Social Security is, you try to plan what that's going to look like. So when we retire, well, you figure I've got my income now, and out of that I pay my mortgage, I've got my federal taxes, state taxes, health insurance, all these different things I pay out of that, and then I have my mortgage as well. Well, once I'm retiring, the FICA is gone, the federal tax is gone, the state is gone. This is like free cash without having any taxes taken out, without having to pay health insurance, because that's already handled up on top, right? So 31,000 plus your Social Security is actually a lot more money than you think it is. Because if you had that before retirement, it would decrease because of FICA, federal taxes, state taxes, health insurance, 401k contributions, all your debt, right? So it would make it that much smaller, but without those factors in there, it's free cash. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's the tax strategy. I showed that to the financial advisor, and for him, that blew his mind. He never even considered taxes. He was just teaching what he was told. So he got, he's the one who gives the cards in the mail, come in and we'll convert everything you have to a Roth IRA. Next slide, please. Younger folks, strategy number 3, the goal is 15 to 20% of your income. People ask me, is that going to be enough for retirement? And my question is, how many of you contribute 20% to your 401k or IRA? How many of you do? 20%, anybody? 15%? 10%? Good. 2? 5%? There's one. So when I put up there 15 to 20%, that's a heck of a goal because no one in here is doing it. It's a great goal to have. So you want to contribute to your 401k to maximize your match. Once you maximize that, then you can invest the remaining percentage in a Roth IRA. So for younger folks, I'm going to kind of skip through some of this because you can kind of read some of those on your own. When you're going through some of these, the best way to think about it, here you are, you're a married couple, you're 30 years old. You're not making a lot of money. I didn't make a lot of money when Sodi and I first got married, we were each making $6 an hour. That was a lot of money back then, 1990. Now it's nothing, So that's a time when I would give to a Roth IRA. Why? I'm probably not paying a lot of taxes to begin with because my income is so low. So you give to a Roth IRA, you allow that to grow over time. After a while, you get, you're married, you get a house, you have kids, you have all of these tax credits and everything else. You're still paying low taxes. You have all these deductions, right? All of a sudden, your kids are graduated from college. All of a sudden, you pay off your house. Now your income is really high. That's when I would switch to a traditional 401k. So start off with the Roth IRA and then move over to a traditional IRA. Does that make sense? Okay. Because at the beginning, you're not going to pay taxes on it anyway. Later on, take the tax break. Honestly, just a couple of years ago, I thought, oh God, Sodi doesn't have one. So I opened up an IRA for her, $7,000 I put into it, and it decreased or it increased our refund by $2,000. So that $7,000 only cost me $5,000. So, and each person is going to be different. Every year you want to think about, what am I going to do? How am I going to approach this? But again, it depends on your income levels. But where are you going to find this money? Bonus dollars, profit sharing, raises, tax refunds, cancel some subscriptions. Do you really need to go to Starbucks? I think they're closing a whole bunch of them, so maybe you don't have to. Do you really need a credit card? Side hustles. Next strategy. Next slide. Baby boomers. Kind of just the opposite. You want to contribute a max. You want to try to contribute as much as possible. At this stage in the game, you're a baby boomer and you're ready to retire, and it's not too late. I have many people, again, they were born and raised that Social Security is your retirement. That's not the case anymore. It says so, like we just saw on the other slide. Social Security says it themselves. Don't rely on it. It's going to be there, but it shouldn't be your full retirement. So, but at this stage in the game, you can start maximizing the 401k. Are you able to put $22,000 toward your 401k? Can you contribute to for a non-working spouse? Can you contribute to an HSA? Again, where do you find the money? Bonus dollars, canceling subscriptions, tax refund raises. This is the one I like, the strategy number 5. Again, I put everything into my 401k because I can contribute more. I don't like the investments in my company 401k, but I like the fact that I can contribute more. But because I'm older than 59 and a half, I can once a year take that amount out and put it toward an IRA where my financial advisor can invest it properly, make more money on it. No taxes because it's being rolled over, and no penalty because I'm over age 59 and a half. Next slide, please. Oh, that's it. So there's a lot of ways you can go about this, but ultimately you have to think about which way is going to be best for you. Some people don't like to be hands-on. They want to be hands-off. So let's just make sure that we have some monies taken out of our paychecks to go directly toward a 401k, then you don't have to worry about it. And so that when you do retire, something is going to be there. Many different ways that you can think about it, strategies, younger, older, that type of thing. But